Welcome everybody. This is the launch of my bucket list adventures. So we're finally here. This is it. I can't believe the work that's gone in to get us to this point. When I came up with this idea of this channel to kind of document my life battling cancer, I had no idea that it would take this long to get to this point. So 5 weeks ago, we came up with this idea of documenting my life battling what I've been battling all my life, and that is cancer. So to get to this point, huge learning curve, equipment, getting set up till we get to this point where we can produce a decent product. It's been overwhelming and very time consuming, but extremely enjoyable in the process. About 5 weeks ago, when I started recording some pieces to put up on the channel, we weren't equipped very well. We kind of did it bare bones, and my intent was to kind of redo all of that to introduce to you, kind of get you up to speed on who I am, what I'm dealing with, the history, where we've been, and where we're going. But I decided instead to kind of just go ahead and include in this first piece the initial broadcast or recording that I did. And again, this was done about 4 weeks ago at a campground we were at. I think the quality is decent. You can kind of get a grip of what's going on and understand too at that time the reality of the news that we had received was still pretty raw. And I think the tone kind of demonstrates that. And I thought it was good and important for you to at least see that. So we're going to show that now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about it a little bit. Here we go. So welcome everybody to my inaugural video for my YouTube channel, Bucket List Adventures. It's kind of been intimidating getting to this point of actually doing this, but after sitting here for some time, we've finally pushed the record button and we're off and rolling. So let me kind of get you up to speed on how we got here and what we plan to do and accomplish here. We've all have used YouTube for a lot of things, to figure out how to replace a car part, how to paint a wall, how to fix that, how to repair this. We've all done it. We've done product reviews, research. I know I've done my fair share. And this is some of that, but it's a little bit different. So to kind of get you up to speed, without boring you, let's go back and kind of tell you how we got here and why we're here. So in 1993, I was diagnosed with colon rectal cancer at the age of 36. It was 1 year to the date that my father had the same thing. So it was quite a shock, but we dove into the protocols and committed to the doctor's advice and started to make our way through that. So that required a resection surgery where they cut out the bad part of the colon, put it back together, and then we underwent nearly a year of chemotherapy. 6 months of that was on a 24-hour pump that I carried around with me, and an extensive amount of radiation. And that radiation that I took at the age 36 is kind of responsible for where I am today. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So during the course of the year following my surgical resection, it was obvious that things weren't going to work properly. They told me that there was enough margins, there was enough room, enough space to not compromise muscle, that they could put me back together and I would function properly. So it became obvious that that was not the case, and a year later required me to go back in and do another surgery where I got a permanent colostomy. That was hard. At age 36, 37, to be faced with wearing a bag the rest of your life. To me, when I looked at myself in the mirror, it was disfiguring. It was almost like I had an amputated arm or leg, and it was difficult to deal with. But in time, it just became part of who you were, and you adjusted. You changed in lifestyle, the way you did things, a lot of changes. But that's been a success, and here we are at the age of 61, and never had another problem with the colon cancer, and everything with the permanent colostomies function properly, and it's been good. Last year, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. So I had some urinary function problems, which they thought could possibly be just an enlarged prostate. So I was scheduled for what is called a TURP. It's basically a Roto-Rooter. You're going to go in and open up that area to allow you to go to the bathroom properly. During that TURP procedure, there was a tumor discovered. And I mentioned earlier about the extensive radiation I had at the age of 36. The damage that was caused by that radiation came into play. He removed as much of the tumor as he could, but the problem was he couldn't stop the bleeding. What was supposed to be a hour-and-a-half to 2-hour procedure turned into a 4.5-hour procedure. It was made known to me afterwards that we nearly bled out on the table because the tissue was like concrete. It wouldn't cauterize, it wouldn't stop bleeding. And then he told me that he looked down through the scope on the verge of cutting me open and packing me with no clot till they could figure it out. he looked through the scope, and for some reason, it just stopped bleeding. The time that followed that procedure found us again doing chemotherapy. Did 6 rounds over nearly 5 months of a drug called Taxotere. And my PSA levels continued to drop, and it showed at the end of that to be in remission, dealt with no longer. The Taxotere unfortunately had side effects, and in my last dosage of that, I started to have pooling of blood in my ankles. The main saphenous vein in both of my legs, the valves stopped working. And that's a direct side effect of Taxotere. And blood could not efficiently get back to the heart. So over some time and trying to figure out what to do, I had a procedure called radio frequency ablation, where they basically went in there and fried that saphenous, that highway that carries the blood to your heart. And then the hopes is that the secondary veins would take over and carry the load, and we'd get back to semi-normal if all of that worked properly. And it did to a certain extent, but it caused some pretty bad problems with my legs. So things are difficult now, just even doing simple things like walking, running, if that's even possible. The legs hurt all the time. It has given me severe neuropathy, and here's what you probably know: somebody that has neuropathy and they've explained to you about how bad it is or how bad it hurts or what they put up with, and listening to someone else's story about pain and how much they hurt, I get it. You know, they think it's all not made up, but it can't be nearly as bad as what they explain, and it's not your problem. But the only way I can describe the pain in your feet from neuropathy, at least for me, is I tell people, if I ask you to take your shoes and socks off, and I poured gasoline all over your feet, and I lit them on fire, and after about 2 minutes I blew that fire out, and then ask you to imagine what your feet would feel like after that. That's what I deal with virtually every day, 24 hours a day. In the beginning, it was horrible. I guess you get used to it or tolerant, or you just get through it. But it's not fun. It's not pleasant. It changes your life. What's happened to me in the last year is, it's hard to even put into words how much my body has failed me. But we're here, and we're moving forward, and we're trying to enjoy life. After I was diagnosed with that prostate cancer, one of my doctors told me that I might have 2 years to live. And that was an eye-opener. It was harsh. It was hard to listen to. Almost unbelievable. And it was raw emotionally for a long time. And still is. So somewhere in that, and during my chemotherapy, my wife and I decided that we needed to enjoy life. We needed to go do the things we wanted to do, hence the bucket list adventure. We were determined to make things happen that we wanted to get accomplished if that 2 years was reality. We this travel trailer behind me is fruit of that. I always wanted to go out west, see things I hadn't seen, the Grand Canyon, before it was too late. So we went and searched for a travel trailer, and we looked for 5 months, and came across a dealership in our hometown that was understanding of our situation and caring and loving in the way that they made this happen for us. And I'll forever be grateful for their friendship and their compassion. So we got this, not ever having one before, and you know how that goes. There's a ton of things to learn. And where do you go? You go to YouTube. I wore YouTube out, watching reviews on products, you know, trying to figure out initially the difference between gray water and black water. I didn't have a clue. We've come a long way. We still got a lot to learn, and I guess that's part of this. I'm not going to ever tell you that I know it all, and the products that I use or things I do are right or wrong. It's what I do. You'll always get the truth from me. Tell you like it is. Tell you what I do and how I do it. And if it works for you, great. If there's something you can get out of that, spectacular. If not, throw the rest of it out the window, and we hope you keep coming back.